On this episode of the Bangkok podcast, we talk about one of Thailand's most persistent pests, the beautiful but invasive water hyacinth.
And while I didn't die on a motorcycle just yet, a friend of mine wound up in the hospital after his scooter accident. We'll tell you if that freaks me out or not.
Here's episode 2.34 of the Bangkok podcast. Hello and welcome to the Bangkok podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, Canadian expat who came to Thailand on a vacation in 2001 and never left.
And I am Ivo Terra, an American expat living full-time in Bangkok since the beginning of 2016. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the Big Mango.
So man, before we get into the green plant that's once again covering the Chao Phraya River, are you reconsidering your recent decision to ride a motorbike in Thailand now that a buddy of yours was recently in a bike-on-bike accident bad enough to stick him in the hospital?
Yeah, it was definitely a big shock on Tuesday. A friend of mine, Jason, who's a 4-year-long expat here in Thailand, I found that he was in the hospital for that very reason. Low-speed collision at the intersection of Asok and Sukhumvit. Some other motorbike guy decided he wanted to make a left turn out of the right turn lane and just came across as soon as the light turned green, as that you know that wave of bikes that move across, and out of nowhere, this guy comes along and clips him, which wouldn't be a big deal, except he landed square on his left knee, and now has 6 screws and a metal plate in his leg. And I just learned today he was supposed to get out of the hospital today, but as oftentimes happen when you go into the hospital, now he has an infection.
Oh, God.
So they're going to keep him at least another couple of days as they run several courses of IV through him. So, yeah, Bangkok. Yeah, motorbikes.
That's crazy. Yeah, and we've talked about this before. I think we said this exact same thing on a previous show. And I'm not saying whose fault it was, but if you're driving in Bangkok, never be the first through a green light or the last through a red light. It's a pretty good rule of thumb.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's somebody else coming on the other direction. So, but I've seen him a couple of times. I went to the hospital. He's being well taken care of. So hopefully he will be out in a couple of days and then lay up at home.
What does he think about it? Does he think, well, it's just one of those things, or is he really scared to ride again now? Or what does he say?
Here's the thing. He said absolutely not. I mean, he called the place that he and I both rent our bikes from to say, hey, I might have broken your bike. Here it is. Go get it because I'm in the hospital. But
I bet they love getting those kind of calls, right?
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I'm sure they do. But he says he's going to get right back on. As soon as he's able to ride again. It is a convenient way he gets around the city, and he's spoiled now. He has access to everything. He's not limited to the BTS line, and I don't think he wants to give up that freedom. So he's not scared off. Or who knows? Maybe when he gets back on the bike again, he might have, I don't know, PTSD or something and keeps him off. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, it happens in any city and anywhere in the world, any small town, any road. There's bound to be accidents. It's just a numbers game. But I'm very happy that it was a low speed crash and he just screwed up his knee. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, sure could have. So I'm hopeful he's going to be okay, and I'm just keep on rolling the dice over here, but I'll keep on riding because when the biking's in your blood, and that's not in my fucking blood, but whatever, I'm going to be okay.
You're so badass.
Ooh, man, you've got no idea. I'm a 1%er.
You're like a stay-at-home husband who put on a leather jacket. That's right, baby.
That's right. That's how badass I am.
Well, as mentioned at the top of the show, the Chao Phraya River right now is a lot more green than it usually is. Usually it's a nice, alluring shade of brown. But right now, as happens every rainy season, the beginning of every rainy season, it is absolutely choked with some floating green plant. These masses of green island fluff float down the river this time of year. And I've seen it every year for all 16 years I've been here, like clockwork. And sometimes it's a little bit, sometimes it's incredibly thick bunches of stuff float down the river, but I've never really understood what it is, where it comes from, or why it appears now and not another time in the year. But you, Ivo, have been reading a little bit about it and have become somewhat of an expert on this
Well,
plant.
As much as one can be, I have a fascination for plants in general, and I spent some time digging into the reality of this thing, which is called it's water hyacinth. In case you're curious of what the name is, although the Thais call it phak java is the name of it, which I'm probably mispronouncing. But yeah, water hyacinth is what is floating up and down. Well, up and down because the river changes directions. The Chao Phraya, depending on the tide, right?
It's a tidal river, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what it is.
Water hyacinth.
Yeah.
Is that
water
a good thing? I don't even know what that is.
Well, it's a thing, right? So it's actually an invasive species. Surprise, surprise. It's not native here. It's called phak java, as you might imagine, because it came from the island of Java, Indonesia. It was brought here in 1901. Now, how it got to Indonesia, because this plant is native to South America. I've got no idea what the traverse from South America to Java was, but it was brought here to the Kingdom of Thailand as a present for the king at that time, and kept in this, interesting jar because it was a beautiful flower. When it flowers, it has this very nice, pretty purple flower. The patterns of the leaves have interesting swirls in it. So it was brought as a gift, and it was a gift put in a jar, and that's beautiful. But as legend has it, somebody did what you do with an unwanted gift. After a while, you throw it out.
Sure, and plastic bags.
Yeah, right.
Bicycles.
So there's a rich history in Thailand. Just throw something in the river. You don't want it anymore.
Man, after 250 years of Bangkok, I really want to know what's at the bottom of that river. That's scary.
Well, in this case, 116 years later, now Thailand is, like many places in the world now, covered with this invasive species, this water hyacinth, and it's not going away anytime soon.
So it's an invasive species. So when it was thrown into the river, that was like game over. It just sort of spread from there.
Yep. It's the same story that's happened with all sorts of, different plants and species, fishes and insects and whatever. But Thailand and other parts of the world now are struggling through this mass of water hyacinth that we just can't seem to get rid of.
Well, it sounds sort of benign, but it's actually a pretty big problem because the Chao Phraya River cuts right through the middle of Bangkok, and it is and has been forever a major artery for the city. I mean, a lot of people rely on it for transportation. It supports a whole host of river communities that go kilometers and kilometers back from the river, not maybe over to the Bangkok side, but especially on the Thonburi side where all the canals still are, and I've been on boats where this stuff has been so thick that it's snarled up the propeller and the guy has to jump in and sort of, because the stem of the propeller on these long-tailed boats is probably 5 or 6 meters long, and swim out to the end of his propeller and sort of rip this stuff off. So it's an invasive species, and it's there in such quantities that it can cause real problems for some of the people that make their living on the river.
Yeah, definitely so. And part of the reason why you see it in the river now is because it's least problematic in the Chao Phraya River, where it's mostly problematic on the Chao Phraya is further up. There are a couple of dams that we have where the Chao Phraya is where we have some water reservoirs and for flooding control. Well, on the other side, on the upstream side of those dams, the water hyacinth is in some cases 3 kilometers thick. Now, not down, obviously, but from dam back 3 kilometers full of water hyacinth.
Wow.
Or the canals that drain into the Chao Phraya, which aren't always on because we have these floodgates which control various things here in the country, in the city. Those also get choked and filled with water hyacinth. And the reason they're in the Chao Phraya now is the government has realized that, these things cause drainage problems because they don't let the water flow in naturally, choking these drainage canals. Maybe we should get rid of them.
Right.
And so that's what they're doing. And so the way you get rid of these, in fact, one of the few ways you can get rid of these, is to break them up, push them out and open the canal and have them come out to the main river so that when it's going downstream, they eventually get out to the ocean. And that's good news. When water hyacinth hits salt water, it dies. It can't handle brackish water, and it certainly can't handle sea salt water. So one of the only ways to get rid of this is to throw it in salt water, and the quickest way to get to salt water is get it into the Chao Phraya River.
So when you see it in the river then floating down in these massive clumps, that's actually like the least horrible part of it.
Yeah, exactly. If we were to go a little further north, we would see serious challenges where it's completely blocking, the entire thing. So and drainage is just part of the problem. There's a lot more not so great about this. But that's why you're seeing it this time of year, is because we've realized that the rainy season is upon us, if yesterday was any indication, and we now need to get rid of it as one of the many things we need to do to alleviate the flooding and the problem, because we're just going to get more rain over the next 5 months.
Oh, so it's not like a natural thing where it flowers every May or June and just happens to be there. It's actually because we're throwing it in the river, so if it's there all year round.
Yeah, it's always there. It grows more the warmer the water gets. It grows much more rapidly. But it is here with us to stay. But it's in the river now because we're finally getting rid of it again. Annually, this is an annual thing that we do.
Well, that's interesting, because on the odd bike ride that I do, and I get out into the suburbs of Bangkok, I see a lot of the, I guess you would call them municipal workers, and they're the ones who have these yellow flat bottom boats, and sometimes I see them just loading them up with this green weed out of the water. And there's whole teams of them with these long spikes with hooks on the end, and they're just dragging these things up. And I've always wondered what they're doing with them. I guess they just putt over to the river and chuck them overboard.
Well, in some cases it depends. I mean, obviously if they're trying to get rid of it and the water flows out to the river, then they'll just, break up clumps and move it out to the river. But if you're seeing them collect it, it could be utilized as actually a goods. We can process the fibers from this water hyacinth into that which we can make textiles out of. So you can go to some of the marketplaces and you'll find bags that are woven out of water hyacinth fibers. You can find shoes, sandals that are made out of this water hyacinth fiber. It grows so stinking quickly, like according to Wikipedia, 2 to 5 meters a day, which is an insane amount.
15 feet a day?
I don't understand how that's possible. But maybe that's roots or the whole. It sounds like an incredible number.
Dude, you can see it growing.
Yes, exactly. Well, you can see bamboo growing, and so maybe this also grows at a similar clip. So that's just a crazy amount of growth here. But yes, it actually can be processed into fiber. There's even usage in food. You can actually eat the roots. There are some nourishments there, like a tuber, if you will. So there are some uses for this. So that collection could be for something other than getting rid of it.
A tuber. So is it like a potato?
I guess I've never eaten it, but yeah, the roots grow long and black, and then so that is what I understand is edible. Doesn't sound very tasty to me, but you never know. Or also the other thing you can do with it is you can use it as a biomass. Which actually use it for fuel. When it composts and rots, it produces methane, which, methane, bad gas. Well, actually, methane we can burn and actually utilize as a fuel source. So there are some uses for this lovely little plant other than just simply choking the waterways.
So why isn't there like a whole industry based around utilizing this stuff as a biomass, or like if there's 3 kilometers thick of this stuff on a pond, you'd think someone would figure out like, oh man, this is just like free money. I can get this and process it and sell it and use it. But why is it just kind of left there?
My assumption comes to the fact that like any of those things, there's not a big industry built around it because there's not a big industry built around it. We have industries built around other sources of fiber, cotton, for example. Lots of subsidies that go into that. You don't get this, and it takes work to utilize it. So it's probably easier to use synthetic materials or existing crops to utilize to get those fibers that we actually need. This is, we're just not set up to process this as we are everything else. Everything I'm reading about the processing is it's very much a manual labor process,
and I
as
can't
opposed to big threshers.
Can't imagine a pair of water hyacinth underwear is all too comfortable.
Yeah, it sounds a little disgusting. Yeah, it doesn't sound like a big selling point. Yeah, it was hard enough for them to sell bamboo, which is just basically processing pulp fiber down to rayon. I don't know what hyacinth breaks down to, but yeah, it doesn't sound all that comfy to me either.
Oh, man, that's crazy. So
Yeah.
if they're not using it and it's causing all these problems, how do they get rid of it?
Well, one of the things that they are using it for, here's the problem with getting rid of it. So, back in the day, with the recently departed His Majesty King Rama the Ninth, started using it or started instructing people in the waste management treatment department to utilize it in the waste reclamation ponds. Because the cool thing about this plant is it has a tendency to clean the water. It's a natural filter, if you will. So it pulls out the heavy concentrations of both nitrogen and potassium, which we get a lot of runoff from farmers using too much fertilizer, burning soil, whatever, which would push too much nitrogen and potassium in the water, which makes nasty algae blooms happen. This water hyacinth absorbs like 70 to 80% of both of those, so that actually cleans the water. Even better, it actually removes things like lead, mercury, and a lovely little thing called strontium-90, which is radioactive material.
Jesus.
It actually pulls that stuff out of the water, making the water cleaner, which is good. You want that, right?
Yeah, but I gotta say, if you've got strontium-90 in your water, there's probably bigger things to worry about than a couple of weeds choking up the drainage ditch.
Well, here's the challenge. Now that you've got this strontium-90 no longer in the water, and this lead and the mercury no longer in the water, where is it? It's in that plant. So what do you do with it?
Out to the ocean.
You can't burn it, right? Let's collect it and burn it, right? Because I'm relatively certain that fire doesn't do much for lead, mercury, or radioactive material, right? So I guess what you can do is bury it. So yeah, you can use it to clean things, but then you've got this hazardous material afterwards, so it's not so wonderful. And when we do leave it in our canals and blocking up the dams up there, not only does it absorb nitrogen and potassium, it also has a thirst for something called oxygen, which the other animals and plants inside of the water need. So it winds up killing fish, killing turtles, and lots of other things out there. And by the way, water hyacinth makes the river water very still, and there's one creature that loves still water to lay its babies in. Well, that's where we get more mosquitoes.
Oh, yeah, that's love mosquitoes.
Yeah. So, we got some good things about it, but on the backside, we got a bad side about it. So almost literally all they can really do is cut it loose. And even if things like chop it up, no, you can't chop it up. If you chop it up, this thing has a tendency to reproduce both sexually and asexually. Sexually, it's bad enough. The seeds will last 28 years.
Holy
dormant.
Moly.
They are viable for 28 years.
This stuff sounds like the aquatic equivalent of a teenager. It's just keep it at home. It's causing all kinds of problems. All you can do is just cut it loose and hope it makes its way out into the world.
Right. Although I don't know, if you chop a teenager up, you don't get like 50,000 more teenagers. I guess is the only positive there. But
50,000 volts.
Yeah, that's what you're going to get. So yeah, it's just a big problem. It's just a really, really big problem. In fact, the problem is so big. I was reading a recent article where the paper was interviewing this guy who's the Deputy Director General of the Department of Public Works and Town and Country Planning. Whew, that's the world's longest title ever.
His business card must be huge.
Yeah, so Samchai says, and I'm not making fun of him, his name really is Samchai, says that there are 3 different departments that are actually in charge of getting rid of this plant. One is his department. 3 different departments that are responsible for getting rid of the plant. Three different departments just in Bangkok. One is Public Works, which is his department. And I looked up what the Public Works Town and Country Planning Department does, and it seems like they are nothing but bureaucracy. They issue the planning permits and zoning permits and make sure that all happens. But I don't think they do much other. It's like a bunch of bureaucrats. So A, they're in charge. B, the Marine Department, they're in charge of navigable waterways in and around the country, right? And also the craft that use them. So they're responsible for licensing those, but also keeping the waterways clean. So that makes sense why they would be in charge. And the third department is the Royal Irrigation Department, which is responsible for all of the non-navigable waterways, if you will, right? Irrigation canals, dams, other water-related projects all around the country.
And I'm sure all these departments are just sharing information and working seamlessly with each other.
Yes, they are in the true Thai spirit. There's no doubt about that. So So Samchai, he says that public works and town and country planning maybe shouldn't really be involved. He thinks that the Royal Irrigation Department should be involved because they have the manpower. However, he says, manpower alone is not enough. You need to get the Ministry of the Interior involved. That's his boss, by the way, because they're the ones that own the tools and the machinery. So it sounds to me like we have bodies in one section and machines in another, but neither of the two shall meet.
Oh, man.
Which is just...
I had no idea it was such a complicated problem.
I didn't, and I think it's. I don't want to put too much judgment on that one, but right now, I think the way the bureaucracy is set up is no one knows. Since 3 different people are dealing with it, it's this whole not my problem thing. I thought the other 2 guys were taking care of it this week. I didn't realize it was my time to deal with it. So you have a lot of that pointing fingers. Bureaucracy sucks everywhere. Perhaps more here. Yeah, wow. So that's what's happening.
To solve the problem, they're literally taking a cue from the problem. You push it out into the river and hope it floats downstream to someone else deals with it.
To me, you have hit the nail on the head, Greg. When I researched this more and more, I thought this plant is Thailand.
That's a
this
metaphor.
This plant is the metaphor
floating
of Thailand government. Only shows up when there's a problem. It's evidence of the problem, but there's really nothing you can do about it other than kind of push it around and hope it's somebody else's that will solve it for you. Yeah, that's it.
That's real funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So water hyacinth, that's what the big floating green mass is, and you'll see it every year about this time. When the rains come in, the government gets excited and says, gosh, maybe we should get it back out to the sea so we can kill it. Good luck,
it could be a lot worse. We could see giant clumps of plastic bags floating down the river, so yeah, those don't biodegrade in seawater.
Right, yeah, seawater is not quite as deadly for those. Yeah, so there's your water hyacinth lesson for the day. And I had a lot of fun researching this topic.
Well, thanks for the education. Now I know a little bit more about it. I can tell people what's going on when their boat gets stuck in the middle of the river and they start freaking out.
And everyone turns to you for that answer. So I've done my civic duty. Well, it's time for us to turn to everyone, or at least my favorite part of the show. And that's a little segment I like to call Love, Loathe, or Leave, where one of us brings up a little something about the life we live here in Bangkok and ask the other person if it's something that they love about living in Bangkok, they loathe about living in the city, or they hate it so much they're ready to leave. And this time, it's my turn because I think you've done like the last 27 in a row.
Get out of here. I have not. Maybe a couple.
It's not that bad. But nonetheless, yeah. So it's my turn. So this happened to me recently. It's a little something I like to call, hey, dude, where's my car?
But you have a motorcycle.
Hey, dude, where's my motorcycle? That works too. Because when you or I park a motorbike somewhere, and I'm smart about this, I take a picture because if you've not parked a motorbike in motorbike parking anywhere in Bangkok, it's you and, I'm not kidding, hundreds if not thousands of other bikes that all look alike, jammed into weird corners, the most bizarre thing. So I'm smart. I take a picture of where my bike is. There's a 50-50 chance that when I return, my bike will not be there. It's not stolen. It's just been moved.
Right.
And the same thing happens with cars. When we park our cars, I don't drive a car, but when people park their cars in a parking lot, you typically leave it in neutral with the tires pointing straight so that the security guards that are in the parking lot can move cars around as necessary. You don't leave them the key. It's not like valet parking or anything. You just leave it in neutral so that they can move it around to accommodate additional parking. So there is a very good chance when you come back to your vehicle and motorcycle, it won't be there. This happens to me anywhere. I mean, I've had it happen like 3 or 4 times. It's just amazing to me.
That's really interesting. I've forgotten how weird that was to me when I first got here because we don't do that in Canada.
Yeah.
I don't know about the U.S. I don't think you do it there either.
Of course not. Where you park is where you park.
When you go through driver's education, when you park your car, you turn off the car, you put it in park, you put on the handbrake. Mm-hmm. You know, yeah. But here, when you park a car, it doesn't happen all the time. Like if you park in a parking spot, like a designated marked spot, usually you put your car in park. This only usually applies to cars who are parking. Like if the parking lot is full, they make a makeshift lane in front of the cars that are parked in the spots.
Yeah.
So like you have, it's like one of those games where you've got 9 tiles and 1 tile is missing. So you just have to like shift all the other tiles around using that one spare spot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really odd for me. And now it's just common sense for me. I park my car, I leave it in neutral, and then I come back, and it might have been moved a couple of 10 or 12 meters up or down the row that I'm in, depending on how the cars have left. But yeah, it's I've forgotten how weird it was, but it's something, you know what? I love it. I think it's a really efficient, unique solution to a problem, which is not enough parking space.
So I'm still in loathe territory because it freaks me the hell out when the motorbike that I've rented isn't where I left it. My first assumption is that it's been stolen, and then I have to go wander around and say, oh no, someone just felt it was in a better position over here for some wacky reason.
Well, I've never dealt with it with motorcycles, and I can imagine that would be a little bit freakier than seeing your car 10 meters further up than it used to be.
Yeah, that's true. It probably would be a different deal because the car can't be that far away, right? But
right.
Yeah, on a bike, still hate it. I'm thinking about getting one of those little boots just for myself and boot my bike so they cannot move the damn thing. Leave my bike alone.
So we can say we love it with a car, loathe it with a motorcycle.
Good call. I like that.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening to the Bangkok Podcast this week. If you have anything you'd like to share or a topic you'd like to hear us talk about on a future show, leave a comment on bangkokpodcast.com, or you can reach out directly to me on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg.
Or you can send us a message either on Facebook or on Twitter at Bangkok Podcast. Don't forget, we have the new Line account set up, and I see that some of you have decided to follow the Line account. Thank you. You can talk back to us there as well. There'll be a link in the show notes for that. I am Evo Terra, and Greg and I will be back here next week with more stories of our lives lived in the City of Angels, right here on the Bangkok Podcast. Cheers! You know what I should do? I should go get like a glass of water just because, so I have it here because my mouth's a little bit parched. So hang on a minute.
Oh, right.
I ate a grand total of 1 time today.
Well, that's no one else's fault but your own.
Well, we went to the Marriott down off Souk 22 and met some of Sheila's teacher friends for brunch.
For buffet brunch?
For a buffet brunch.
Oh, say no more. I don't expect you to eat for a few more days.
Exactly right. So my mouth's a little dry. Hang on a second.
Okay.